Hope you're all okay. It's another week, and what a great way to kick it off, I think, is to think about ourselves for a change. We're going to be looking at PMO development plans. So hopefully you're in the right place. So somebody that is interested in development, interested in PMO, bringing those two things together. And what we wanted to share with you today, we've actually just recently launched a new kind of ebook downloadable thing for you to be able to take away and to keep. But for you, before we give you access to that, just take you through a few things about PMO development. Before we kick off, we are very much into our chitty chats. So please do make sure you open up a chat window, and anything that you want to put in there, please do. I will be keeping an eye on it as I go through. And you will have some time at the end for questions, but I'm not averse to if you want to get in with a question while I'm actually talking about something, that's fine too. You can just interrupt. And yeah, let's get on with it. So PMO learning. We are an organization, a training organization that is focused purely on PMO. And as much as I don't think there's anybody else in the world that has a training organization that is purely focused on PMO. So if you're in PMO and you're interested in developing, you couldn't be with a better organization because obviously we live and breathe PMO every day. So what we're going to be doing today then is looking through development plans. And interestingly for this, is how many people don't necessarily have a formal approach to their development plans. And it doesn't matter whether if your organization has one or doesn't have one. This is about you taking ownership for your career and being able to think about your own development. It's your career, it belongs to you. So hopefully by the end of this session, we'll just have a little bit more of an idea about what goes into and thinking about development plans, rather than just thinking, oh, I need to do some development. I wonder what I can do. Yeah, there are a bit more of a structured process to think about your development. So that's what we'll go through. I don't know if it'll take the full hour, so hopefully you have a little bit more of your lunch break. So what are they, first of all? They're a structured plan that essentially will help you as an individual, guide you thinking about your career and your growth within the job that you're performing around PMO. Most organizations have them, most jobs have some kind of form of development plan. But if you're not familiar or you've not had that opportunity to have something like this, there's no reason why you can't do this yourself. But if your organization does, it'll just give you a little bit of an idea about what they are and how you can be approaching them. So structured plan. Let's have a look. So why have them? So from an individual's point of view, first of all, there are reasons why you might consider it. And certainly within the whole kind of PMO space, sometimes it's just getting that clarity about what it is that you're doing, what you're doing now, where you'd like to be thinking about in the next months, years. We know that PMO is one of those ever evolving jobs. I'm sure you're aware of it, having worked in it, even as little as, if you've been in it for, a short amount of time, you're probably starting to realize that there's a lot of stuff behind and around PMO, which is constantly evolving. But development plans do obviously allow you to think about, we've got some gaps. It's always good to try and think about, well, what do I want to do in relation to not only my current organization, but as the profession as a whole around PMO, and also being able to think about essentially wanting to do development that is a little bit more considered because we know that time's precious, money's scarce. So you want to make sure that you're choosing things that are going to work the best for you. But also we've got to think about and consider the organization as well. So from the organization point of view, development plans have become a thing because it allows organizations to have a better handle on, each individual employee that they are doing development that's aligned with their, organizational goals. There's always that kind of stuff that, around succession planning and all of those kind of HR targets, but also making sure that from an organization point of view, that they do have things in place whether that be formal courses or other opportunities to learn for their employees. I mean, from an organization point of view, you look at some of those things that those kind of surveys that are out there about what's really important for organizations, the ability to attract and retain talent. And from a talent point of view, i.e. you, you're looking for opportunities that are not necessarily about moving into a role with a decent sum of a salary. For a lot of people today, it is about having these kind of opportunities that become part of your employment benefits. So for organizations, they know to attract and retain people, they've got to be looking after them. And again, development plans is one aspect of the kind of performance review type cycle that happens in organizations each year. And interestingly, if you look back at, how we've got here today, because a lot of people, again, you don't really think about, well, why do organizations do all the things that they've been doing? Actually, if you go right back, 50s and 60s, when this kind of stuff, became important, that they knew that they had to be doing more to be looking after employees. So you can see back then, when we look at things like competency frameworks and self-assessments, they've been around since the 80s. But did you know that you could only do or start to do one specifically for PMO people in the year 2021? I mean, that's like 41 years later. There is actually something specifically for PMO. And I will be talking to you about what those things are specifically for PMO, because that kind of all fits in with the development plan. But it was into the 90s where individual development plans, as we kind of know them today, came into the fore. You would have heard about things like balanced scorecards, and then coming back into like the noughties now, how things are changing in the way that we look at development, that there's that kind of push and pull between the kind of formal development and then some of the more, less informal stuff. It's not just about technical capability. We know that it's also about your people, your interpersonal skills as well. That became a big focus in the early 2000s. And of course, today, when we're now on the cusp of some AI revolution that is going to be changing the way that we do many things, also the how we might procure knowledge or learn things will also be changing. So again, we've got other things that are coming to the fore around development, and I think one of the things that a lot of people certainly grab hold of is the kind of social learning aspects as well. So if you're in and around different peers within the professional groups, so for example, if you were at the House of PMO conference just the other week, that would have been a huge social learning thing for you. So there's a lot of different things that are coming down the line for us, but it's for the PMO, we've often been seen as the kind of poor relation to project managers. And, we haven't had some of these things in place that our project managers have had access to. So, now is our time. We have things in place that can help us in terms of how we do our development better. So, before we get into some details around development plans, I think it's quite nice just to kind of set the scenes on where we are in terms of things like PMO career trends, because it's the trends that kind of inform what might be considering doing in terms of our development. So there's the obvious. Yeah. So for people as the projects and programs and portfolio, is that predominantly is the landscape that we're operating in now in PMO, whether we be working at a project level, programs or portfolios, those are the kind of main staples of what it is that we're actually working within and supporting and advising on and all of that kind of stuff. So it's the three P's. That's great. We kind of know that. And there'll always be developments and things that are happening and evolving in those three spaces. The second one is the way that PMOs are evolving. So our roles will naturally change if the PMOs that we work within are also evolving. So over the last, I would say, probably 5, 6 years, there's been a shift to becoming a more service-based PMOs. And service-based, well, how does that different to any other types of PMOs you might be working on? The service-based PMOs is that the model of being able to offer the right kind of services at the right time with the right skills what our organization really wants, not necessarily what it thinks it needs, but what it really wants. So again, it's about being able to think about how PMOs might evolve, and therefore your role within them will also be evolving. We're seeing a lot more of the multiple PMO within organizations. Sure, we still see a lot of what we call, and Eileen's favorite term, the pools and the pots. So the PMO is one person or two people within an organization. But because projects and change, and certainly in larger organization, are becoming more complex, more complicated, the need for more PMOs to look at in certain aspects of the business, a lot more multiple PMOs within organizations, but bring another kind of dimension to your potential role going forwards in PMOs, which differs so much from if you were just that singular PMO. We've talked a little bit there about the future. Future's kind of on our doorstep right now. It's in different ways. You might be thinking about that right now, but it will be changing. It will be offering other opportunities to us that we currently probably can't even guess at right now. We have some ideas about how the old digital data and AI revolution is going to be coming at us, but there's going to be some stuff there. And for some PMOs today are already doing this kind of stuff. We've seen some of that at the conference, House of PMO conference a couple of weeks ago, with people starting to share what they're doing within the PMO. And again, that has meant some different opportunities for the people that are within it. We're always going to have hotspots. So certain areas that will always be the ones that are tricky for our organizations that really draw on the kind of expertise within the PMO. You'll see these that, the top four that you'll pull out, you'll see them time and time again. But again, if I'm thinking about my development and where I'm going in this whole PMO space, there will be some of your own hotspots for where you are right now in your organization, but also be aware of some of the external ones. What are a lot of organizations looking at that are having difficulties with, and they tend to be these kind of hotspots. So what about the challenges then? So for us as PMO professionals, we're doing more with less. I think that's a something that I think many of us will recognise. So it's about how, we're dealing with it, how we tackle that kind of stuff, how we do it as an individual, but also our teams, so we're doing that more with less. And what is it that we're trying to do and trying to achieve? It kind of has that thing here that we're, constantly trying to think about, well, we want to do the best it can for the organisation, but there's the recognition we're doing more with less. There's this perceived value question that keeps coming up time and time again about the PMO and about what value it offers to the organization in its current form and what it can be doing in the future to increase the kind of value and perception of values within the organization. Again, it impacts the way that we operate as a team. It impacts the maybe the training budget that we get allocated or the time and in order to be able to utilize some of the new things that we want to put in place. There's a lot of things that come from this perception of value, and you will have this within your own organization along with this one, which is again is still one of the most dominant reasons why PMOs might shift and change in terms of what they're doing within the business, and it is and tends to come from the top. That people really see great value in the PMO and what it is that they're doing. A shift in change in those kind of high level, board level people can mean that some of the sponsorship or championing can drop off. It impacts what it is that you're doing within the whole PMO space. The technology changes, and sometimes, again, within the PMO space, you don't necessarily have the budget allocated in order to be able to start to make some of these changes. I think we see all the time, but yes, we're looking at, there's AIs knocking on the door, yet our organisation still won't put in place Copilot or give access to ChatGPT or some of these other AI tools, which means that we're not allowed to even play and see what might be possible. We're always going to have these kind of challenges. We're going to have different challenges in terms of the delivery approaches that our organization wants to either go for or it's geared up to do, or some of our board level have been to some briefing and have heard about these new ways that we could be delivering change faster, smarter, all of those kind of things. We did see it, obviously. I think for many of you will recognize that when the whole kind of, agile might be the new thing as being able to do things better and quicker, and all the kind of challenges that came with that. Who knows what might be coming down the line? Right now, we're having discussions about things like, still the hybrid ways. So we've got some agile delivery going on, some waterfall. How do we kind of process and manage that around from the whole PMO space? We look at things like DevOps and product management. We've got those aspects to the business that might be, starting to come into the PMO space as to how can we support these other people within our business that are delivering change but may not be the traditionalist kind of project managers. Interesting stuff. And then finally, the challenge of being able to upskill, to keep up to date with all of this kind of stuff that's coming down the line. The different challenges that gets thrown at us. We've got these bigger kind of like challenges that kind of sit there, like the whole kind of data and AI questions, but we still have small ones too. If you look at some of the hotspots that we've talked about, some of those are just going to be, changing, evolving, and we need to be ready to be able to offer and get on it. And that means being upskilled, at least having the knowledge or being at least one step ahead of some of the people within your business asking you about, I need some help with X. What can you offer me? So rather than the PMO being able to say, well, actually, we've not really done anything on that before. Maybe we should be. So it's about PMO getting in the front foot. We are supposed to be there to help and support project delivery within our organizations. And that means being able to scan around at what's going on, not just within your business today, but potentially where it's heading going down the line. So there's opportunities. We look at the challenges. We don't want to be going right down that rabbit hole and thinking, gosh, this is all really hard work. Let's look at the opportunities so we can think about and focus on the things that are going to really make the difference. So that is all about trying to understand more about the business that you're in. Where is it heading? What is on the cards for them? What is it that they're wanting to do more? What are the strategic goals? All of that kind of stuff. Trying to understand what it is so we can then focus as individuals, but also as a PMO team. We've got to think about how we're going to future-proof in terms of what we're doing around the whole kind of PMO and what we offer. So again, just thinking about, not just today, but also starting to put some foundational steps in place as to what we're going to be doing in the future. We've got to think about having the right people in the right roles. There's a lot of different aspects of PMO work. And the very easiest thing is to think about, well, do we have today the right people in the right roles? So then how does that work out in terms of if we jump forward 6 months or in a year's time? We will still have the right people in the right roles. Who are the right people and what are the right roles? Again, it's going to be changing, but that's opportunity. And there's one thing that we can guarantee with the whole kind of PMO space is that there will be changes. We are in the business of change. Obviously, we support it, but we also got to be ready for the change that comes to us. Which again, the innovative changes that will be making life easier, but in the short term are probably going to be more difficult. However, for you, that means you're probably going to be getting your hands on some things that you never thought that you would be. The whole thing around the data stuff. It's bubbling, it's brewing. There's something that are just, are going to be going off it as a rocket. There was a Project Hack event just last week in Gloucestershire. Didn't manage to get down to it before, but PMO Learning has supported the Project Hack from the early days. We provided it with beer money for the for the teams when they've been hacking all day. And then today, our involvement is about being able to make sure that PMO people are aware of things like this. Now, Project Hack is an event where people are allowed to go along and play with this kind of AI technology and these data problems and all this kind of stuff. And I've just literally done some judging this morning on 6 teams that were hacking. One set of teams were looking at risk management and about coming up with a solution where they could be writing better risk descriptions, but also then being able to potentially predict risks that for projects coming down the line. So they're already doing that kind of stuff. The second one was a team of people doing about schedules and about how we can do better at predicting around the schedules and the scopes and where we are potentially going to get delays. They're doing it right now. So it's only going to be a matter of time, but it's exciting stuff. It's really interesting stuff. And again, it's another source of learning. And you want to make sure that you're wanted and you're in a place where you're valued. We see too many PMO people being disappointed in the fact that they are fired up to do this stuff. We want to do a great job. We know what we need to be doing to do a great job for our organizations, but it feels like we sometimes got one hand tied behind our back. For you, when you're thinking about your development, you might be thinking about today, but you've also got to be thinking about the future where you do want to be places where you can do good stuff for PMO as well. And that's the real opportunity for you. So when we think about development, then what are we thinking about? So we've got some of the core and key skills that that when we do think about PMOs and what it is that we do, we've got the obvious stuff, which is a delivery, what we could delivery support type things. So those are some of the hotspot things we mentioned before, but that's things that you're doing on a day-by-day basis. The planning support you do, the stuff around risk management, resource management, issues, financial tracking, whatever it might be, it's a delivery support type stuff. So that that's a key area of the role that if you want to call it, it's kind of like the technical side of the job. That's the skills that we absolutely need to, because they're our bread and butter. That's what's going to make sure that we continue being employed or will be employed because we understand and get, all of aspects of delivery support. We've got the second bit there in terms of the whole entire change environment. So it's the things that run across the projects and programs and portfolios. If you look towards roles like the portfolio office or the center, the enterprise level type PMOs, where you're doing other things that run across all of the activity around change. So that is putting the frameworks in place, like the governance and assurance type things. That is where all the methods and tools sit. So our roles are not just about supporting delivery, we are essentially there to ensure the environment or the ecosystem in which all these projects and programs and portfolios are running are underpinned with good practices. So again, we think as a PMO role, it's not just about delivery support, it's how we can help our entire organization do projects better. We've got the hard and the soft skills then. So some of the harder skills will be things like I want to be able to write when I get a business case from project managers, I need to be able to critique that and give that really good, that they're on the right lines, or they might need some advice on that. So, business case, for example, would be partially hard because you need to understand the whole process of what makes a good business case. But the soft skill side of that is that ability to challenge, to push back on project managers, to be writing better, to be able to give advice, to be able to train people in how to write better business cases. So again, it's a hard and the soft side. PMOs and good PMO professionals really do have those left and right side of the brain thing going on because you have that kind of technical analytical side of what you do. There's the other side though, which is all about the things that are about the people, because so much of our job is about working with people, friending with people, working with our stakeholders, our clients. It's the people side of it. And when you put those two bits together, that's what really makes that role work. We've got underpinning knowledge that allows us to be able to operate within our businesses. It'll also be stuff that you don't even really think about, but it'll be some of the corporate systems that you need to use. How does procurement work? How do I know who to go to get sign off on certain things? How do I, what is the good practices that are available and are out there for some of the key things that I'm doing? Do you know enough about how the finance works within the organization around the whole project space? This is underpinning knowledge that are not necessarily directly relatable to the day-to-day job you're going. But it's there helping you, and sometimes you're not even aware of it, but you are aware of it when it starts to change or there's new rules. So again, is the change in our corporate environments, certainly in the last few years and going forward into the next in terms of the economical changes and things like that. And then we've got to think about our behaviours, which again underpin everything that we do. You look at the good PMO teams, the ones that are helpful, but they're not, you can't walk all over them. It's finding those kind of balances on how we deal with people. We get things thrown at us, we can show resilience on that. But equally, we know when to say no and push back on things. It's those kind of behaviours that underpin. Again, we often think about development, but we go straight for the kind of technical stuff. Whereas actually, really, we're looking for, yeah, I'd really love to know the technical stuff, but it'd be great if you wrap around some of the key skills, knowledge, and behaviors that I also need to be able to implement that in my day-to-day work, which is exactly what some of the courses that we do here at PMO Learning, some of the specialist courses that we're doing. So take one of them. We do one on benefits management. Now, if you were to go and do the managing benefits course, 5 days, massive, like, full on course, mainly for people that are like benefits management owners and things like that, or benefits managers. But from a PMO point of view, we need the knowledge of benefits management and what it's all about and how it works and what the process looks like. But from a PMO point of view, we also need to know the softer side of stuff. So who's going to be doing what, and how do I push back on that one, and how do I get this information from these people? Those are the kind of things that are important to us at PMO Learning. It's not just the knowledge. You've got to be able to utilize this stuff back in the workplace, and that's where the beauty of it comes from. We understand the left and the right side brain of PMO people, so the development that we're offering is really very much in line with that. So when we're thinking about development plans, we're thinking then about career pathways. Yeah. You've got to think about, the people that are working within the whole kind of PMO space. And you might recognize some of these roles that I'm flashing up right now. And these are taken from the high level roles, are taken from the House of PMO and the course that we're offering and offer across all of these levels. So we do each one of these, the essentials for PMO administrators, analyst, manager, and director. So it makes sense when I'm talking to you now about development that we're going to align it with some of the courses that we're already doing. Because again, development for you can be about, well, if I'm working as a PMO analyst, it's not necessarily that you want to become a PMO manager. You have got other options, which is to go deeper. You could go more specialized, for example. Or if you're currently a PMO manager that's working with and managing a certain type of PMO, you may want to start to think about a different type of PMO or a bigger PMO. Or actually, I don't want to manage a PMO on its day-to-day basis anymore. I actually want to get involved in setting these things up for the first time. So there are different things to us to think about in terms of our career pathways, which will have an impact on the way that we think about our development and therefore our development plan. And that's the beauty about this role. You can either sit within the role that you're performing and be fantastic at it. You don't have to take the career path and the ladder. It's not necessarily for everyone. But there's just some of the ideas about what can happen in terms of career pathways, and of course, then thinking about how the development pins to that. So, a development plan. It has four components. It has goals, it has skills, it has actions, it has progress tracking. All of them are crucial for it to kind of make sense and to hang together and to be structured in a way that really becomes meaningful, but it'll help you stay on target. And again, it can be something that you just look at once a year. It depends on the career that you have. If you're, somebody that's been in an organization for a number of years and you don't plan on leaving anytime soon, you might come and do this maybe once a year. If you're a contractor or a consultant, you might be looking at this stuff every 6 months, even 3 months, who knows? But it's just something that's there and utilized. So let's have a look at some of the four components in a bit more detail. So the obvious things are about defining some goals. And if you're working within an organization, it makes sense that you align those to your organizational needs and also your own ambitions. Making it really strong against a particular goal that your organization has makes your manager more inclined to back you if there might be some pound notes to be spent on some of these activities that you want. So you think about that. It's a strategic aims of the organization, and it filters down into, well, I need to make sure that our PMO, us within the PMO, have got the right kind of skill sets to be able to meet the strategic objectives of the organization. It's just an example, but it's how, organization is looking at digital transformation. Transformations seem to be the thing, and certainly have over the last few years, and I think they'll continue for a while. But digital transformations are a big one for a lot of organizations. So does that mean that there's some work to be done in how you might align your own development? An obvious one, yeah? So you got to think about how your PMO might support some of these objectives. Is it that you're going to be looking at things more like from an operational point of view? So how will we be supporting these digital transformation pieces of work? Or is it that it's more strategic, which is actually we've got a big transformation coming down. So therefore, there's going to be a lot of activity around the portfolio level, that kind of strategic level about how this transformation is going to work. So it's going to get you thinking about, well, where do I sit in all of this? Because you've then got your own personal ambitions. You've got both your short term and your long term. Yeah. So you're thinking about the next role or the level you'd like to reach. Now, it's not necessarily about moving on. We can talk about next role, meaning my next role in terms of the PMO that I'm currently working within. So I might be a PMO analyst currently working on a project, but actually there's an opportunities coming down the line that means that I can move on up to program level. It's going to bring a whole new set of skills and experiences. Yeah, so it's not necessarily about moving roles in terms of job titles, but it could be about the role that you'll perform or the level that you're going to do. You've got to think about whether you're wanting to do your focus around the actual whole PMO space, or actually does it become a bit broader? Yeah, again, it depends on the role that you're currently performing, where you are, what it is that you want to do, what are your personal ambitions. And of course, you're looking for that bridge between the two. The intersecting point is where you ideally want to be. So if you know that you've got a thing from the organization where we need to be getting better at the reporting, because at the minute they can't make more strategic decisions because the data is not there. So therefore, data and analyst skills will be something that we're going to have a look at, because it's coming down the line. It's going to be something that we've absolutely got to get on. So it's going to be potentially one of the development areas that you're going to want to have a look at. So from a goal point of view, then it's prioritization is crucial for it, because in theory, you could write a massive long list of things that you want to do in terms of development. It's not going to be realistic because you're not going to be able to do it all, because you're going to be setting some time bound in order to be able to do some of this stuff. So prioritization, we all know that. Portfolio prioritization, exactly the same thing here, that this is about your goals in terms of your development, but you're doing the same stuff. What are the critical ones? Which ones are the desirable? Which ones are the personal? Which ones are we going to be able to tackle first? There's going to be a lot of other things that you're going to want to do, but we've got to find that balance, because there's only so much time, there's only so much money. One of the ways, and you've probably heard of it before, is SMART. When you set objectives around goals, SMART stands the test of time, because it really does work and really helps you to pinpoint and be specific about what it is that you're trying to do. And not only that, it brings in measurement, which we'll come on to. It's one of the areas of development plans when you've set your goals and what it is you're going to do. But you should, if you're not familiar with the whole kind of SMART approach, have a look at it, because it will allow you to be better at. I'm going to set some goals, but the goals have to be smart, because you'll be more inclined to actually hit those goals. If I just say I want to do some development around data analytics this year and leave it at that, chances are you'll get to the end of the year and it's not been done. And SMART is one way that should appeal to many PMO people, because you know how much we do like a framework and a structure around things, and things that help people get stuff done. So your goals will be SMART. So you've got the skills that you want to think about, and PMO Learning is a partner of House of PMO. And if you're not familiar with House of PMO, one of the aspects of what they've got there is this PMO competency framework. So we saw there, the 1980s, it was a big explosion of many organizations and many professions doing it. We've only just got it in the year 2021. So we're utilizing the House of PMO competency framework assessment, because it helps you to think about, well, what is it that I need? What is it that I've got already? What is it that I would like to be doing? Where's the gaps? So it gives you an idea already, rather than thinking, well, I think I need to know more about that or that. This is allowing you to be able to really see and give you a very simple overview with something like this, which is showing you where your gaps might be against what your organization needs, or against the good practice that has been set in this competency framework. So again, it's allowing us, we've got all these things that are now allowing us within PMO to be a little bit more structured in our approach to thinking about what we might want to be doing in terms of our development. we can look at what our organization wants from us, but we've also got to think about, well, what about some of these? We talked about the delivery support type things. You can see these on that spider diagram going round. So you can see there that for this particular person, they are excelling in areas like risk management and quality management, but need to potentially look at finance management or business case or change control. You can start to see where there's some gaps. Now, when you see the gaps, you can then have better, more informed conversations with your manager, the organization about, well, what is it that I, as an individual within the PMO space, should be looking at? And also, what's our team competency look like? So, where are we as a team? If you go back to what we said before about getting the right people in the right roles, do we have people? What's our profile look like as a team? Are we covered off? Or is there going to be some gaps because actually none of us are really skilled up in certain areas? So again, it's giving us a different insight. Of course, on any development plan, then you're going to be able to set your goal. You're thinking about what kind of learning and development is going to help you to reach those goals. And then you're going to be thinking about, well, what actions I'm going to take. 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be an answer of, well, I'll go on this training course. That's part of the way there in terms of development, but there will be other things that you do. And there's lots of opportunity as well for PMO people to do lots of different types of activity that are going to help in your development. Now, we absolutely advocate the 70-20-10, which is the HR learning and development approach and thinking around learning development. And if you're not aware, so the 70-20-10. So 10 is a 10% of what you should be thinking about is a formal kind of training courses. So those are the things that we do a year at PMO Learning. So that's doing your certification in, say, well, new course business cases, that's just out, or you might be doing your essentials or your P3O. Yeah, there's more formal courses. The 20% is what you might be doing in learning, what I like to call social learning, which is the things that you get from attending a webinar, going to a conference, picking up a book, getting involved in some kind of online forums, or that kind of thing where you're interacting with others and getting knowledge from others. And the 70%, that whacking great big 70%, is what's considered to be on the job learning. So that can be that you're learning from, being given a new task, I'm not quite sure about, oh, I'm going to go about doing this, but I will learn how to do that as I go through on my job. I might be mentoring or being coached by somebody. I might be given a new challenge, that we need a new PMO tool within the organization and nobody has done that before. I might put myself up for that kind of opportunity. It can be a lot of different things, but it's a 70% is a great big number, which is the opportunity is in your learning and when you're doing the job that you're doing. Been tricky over the years because of COVID and us all working, going and working at home. And a lot of this stuff used to come from osmosis, being around our colleagues, asking the question, oh, how did you do that? All of those kind of things. It's had a battering. But again, it is a massive part of how we learn. So we've got to think about how we're going to utilize, the different types of resources and tools we've got available. We've got to think about some of the other things where we can actually get some learning from others. So it can be other PMO people within our organization. It might be some managers. We've got our own L&D departments within organizations as well. There's a lot of different ways to develop, and these are some of them. So this is spread across your 70-20-10 in terms of the different types of things you're doing. If you just take a look at that right now, you're on let's say, well, it's lunchtime, and I hope you're learning something. So, you've invested in a lunch and a learning type session, so you can do more of those kind of things. Yes, it eats into your lunchtime, but it's there. There's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of people doing these kind of sessions, so you've got some things at your fingertip. Yes, some of these are going to cost a small amount. Some of them are going to be a little bit more investment, but then you've got to think about your portfolio. Yeah, so when we were looking at what we're going to put on the development plan, our portfolio and different activities that we want to be doing, you're looking for that blended approach, But again, there's a lot of things in here that you can possibly be thinking about in terms of how you might do some of that development. So this final part of it is to be able to track that you're actually doing this kind of stuff. And what better than to think about some of the metrics? Now, this is really actually quite a nice thing to pull in, because when we look at PMOs as a whole, one of the, I suppose, the trends at the minute is to be thinking about the metrics of how well PMOs are performing within the organization. So this is going to give you some kind of headways and thinking about metrics from your own development, but it'll help you get into that whole kind of space around metrics and measures and all that kind of thing. But metrics and measures and things like that are going to help you to feel like you're actually doing something. And more crucially, you're able to tell others that you're actually achieving things. And one of the main things that we'll think about on here is key performance indicators. And I want to give an example about this. So we were thinking about that kind of digital role. We've got some AI type stuff that we want to do. So for this one here, an example of a really good, well thought out kind of like it's got a metric is I want to complete the Agile PM certification by X date. That's a tick. You either do it by that date or you don't. You've either hit that metric or you haven't. What about things like if I improve the accuracy of the portfolio reporting by 10% within 6 months? Yeah, but that's going to be something that you're going to be able to link from my development. But I'm learning about how I want to get better at doing the reporting side of it. But in order to be able to really strengthen that, to make it really hard hitting, I'm going to be able to look at how do I benchmark that right now? Do the development, and then after the 6 month, I'm going to be able to demonstrate that I've hit that 10%. It's getting you to think more about I'm not just doing development over here and it's just a standalone thing. I'm incorporating it into the PMO role we're doing, into the PMO team. Becomes a lot stronger a proposition to your managers, your organization, if you can prove that your development, good development, is leading to real change within the PMO activities. Again, you've got things like numbers that you're attending and completing a number of training sessions between a certain amount of time. Again, that's a tick on a box. I've actually done those, I've actually completed them. And again, you've got other things where you'll have, but you're doing things with other people and you're able to demonstrate that you've done those things with other departments. And actually, here's what's come out of them. Here's a piece of maybe something you've worked on together, or here's an improvement that's been made. Yeah. So again, it's getting you to think a little stronger about some of the metrics and the measures. With this kind of stuff as well, it's about having that regular check-in. So you might as well just set it on your calendars now. You start off at the beginning of the year and you'll set it for each quarter and it's going to pop up and it's going to remind you. And you're going to be like, yeah, God, yeah, okay, forgot to do some of this stuff. Get you back on it. Yeah, so it's having that regular check-ins and reminders, making sure that the metrics are actually linking back to some of the goals so you can prove that, you're making some progress, but also that you're able to demonstrate that. We talked about right at the beginning about some of the challenges, the perception of value from PMO and PMO people. This is the kind of thing that's going to make a little bit of a difference in terms of that perception. But actually, yes, we think about our own development and what we're doing and how that ties to the work that we're doing that ultimately links back to the strategic goals of the organization, becomes a lot more powerful. So with this one here, this is another example, is that you want to build expertise in project data analytics to improve the reporting and decision making. This is just giving you just an idea. It's going to be one that many people might already be thinking about this. So for example, there are an advanced data analytics course available, Power BI. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's using it. I'm starting to use it. I think I'm probably going to enroll on some kind of online course there. There's a lot of this stuff is available. It could be, it could even be a YouTube. Doesn't necessarily have to be something that's really expensive. But again, it's about you doing it by a certain date. You're then thinking about, well, how do I utilize that learning? Well, actually, I'm going to come up with the free automated dashboards that I would have learnt about through this Power BI course, for example. And this is how I'm going to be able to demonstrate that. And that will be the action that's taken, and I'll be able to utilize that. There'll be three of them. I'll be able to show people. Again, we're getting into that harder bit where it's about being able to show some good metrics, like reduction of how things might take, or how we may be increasing or reducing things. Again, there's different things to think about when we think about the development area that we want to focus on. And again, we might be going even more harder with things that we know turns people's heads, is that when we start to look at some of the project metrics, so again, here about forecasts, for example, would we be able to do baseline data and trend analysis on that over the 6 months? Don't know. But then again, you've got other things where it's about interacting with other people and getting feedback, which is one of those areas that again, the perception of the PMO, we find out a lot more by actually just asking people what it is, what we're doing and whether we're doing it right and doing it right for them. Again, ones that incorporate other people's feedback. You can start to see that development becomes something that is a lot more structured, should be taken a lot more seriously. And this is the way that you can do that. And development plans have been, like we say, they've been around properly, I would say, early 90s in this kind of format. So they're there for you to, to utilize. So they're not just a box ticking exercise. It is about figuring out what you really, really want to do, what you're going to need to get there, and obviously making it happen for you, but also making that link back into the organization. We want to do development that has that balance between it's good for you, but it's also going to be giving something to your organization. Otherwise, why would they back you and support you in that? So there's a load of different types of development plan templates out there. You need to do a search and you'll come up with some. But this is our template. This is one that and I've utilized for years, doing career development type stuff with people. It's simple. It kind of makes you think about it from a yearly basis. You can start at any point in the year. It doesn't matter because there's no dates on that. You can just see the quarters, for example. It's like what the development need might be. Link that to what the business need might be. What actions you're going to take. How will you know if you've been successful? When you're going to do it, and what the progress is. It has no more than that. Yeah, the template is available, and Jen's put that into the chat for you to have a look at everything that we're talking about today. There is an ebook download, there is the template. This recording will become part of that page as well, so you can listen again if you'd like to. But just coming into the last bit, so just thinking about development plans, why we back them is because they do make a difference to people. Having control over your development and your career. You know, we live in times where we're no longer working for the same organization for years and years and years. This is about thinking about you as well as your current organization, making sure your development is developing well in line with what the wider PMO space is happening, regardless of what industry you're working within. It's finding that balance between them. It's giving you time to think about, well, I've got different options here. There's some formal courses, and then we need to think about some kind of like bite-sized stuff. Great to think about some of the smart things, thinking about metrics, thinking about actually, I turn up for my performance review in 9 months' time and I can sit down and put that down in a piece of paper in front of my manager and say, beginning of the year, we talked about, development requirements. This is what I've done. This is how I've been able to measure it. And I think this is how some of the outputs and the outcomes have come from that. Let's have a discussion about it. And where do we go next? It's very powerful. Employers are looking for employees that care about the job that they're doing and are interested in getting better at it. And development plans are just one way that shows that you take it seriously. And it'd be really interesting that, if you take on some of this advice and do that this year, I'd love to know how it goes in terms of, when you do put that piece of paper back down on the performance review time and see what the reactions are. But it is about taking, some personal accountability for your development. But again, I think with some of this kind of stuff, because we do this kind of thing all the time, what we find from people is some of the kind of intangible benefit of doing this. And one of them, really hard to put into words, but what we do see a lot is the increasing confidence in people. It's not one of those things you're going to be able to do a smart thing on. I mean, how do we rate confidence? It's just one of those things that's really, really difficult. But for you as a personal takeaway from getting a handle on some of this stuff, you do start to feel a bit more in control. Actually, I've got a bit of a plan here. I'm not just leaving this to, chance. I feel like I've got that I'm actively taking part in how I want to develop and get better at what I do. So, the confidence building stuff is something that we do see in a lot of people. So, like I said, we've been doing the series on this. I think one of the reasons why we kicked it off was because actually, I think for a lot of people that work in the PMO space, you're perhaps not as up on the whole kind of L&D science, learning development science behind some of the training aspects of, and development aspects. So we wanted to bring that to PMO people so you kind of understand that there is a process. So we kicked off with the training needs analysis process as a whole, and you can download that and it'll take you through each piece. As you'll see in there, though, what we've now added to it is more detail around the PMO development plan aspect. There's going to be more of these coming to you because there's more in the training needs analysis ebook that kind of needs expanding out. All of these things help to design to get you as an individual or you thinking about your PMO team better in terms of the development that you might need to take. So that's it. You've all been very quiet and I've not been really able to look at any questions that might have been coming in, but there's a lot of chitty chatter. Um, one of the things that we want to do is also bring a lot of this kind of stuff directly to some of our corporate clients, which is going really well as well. We got name checked at the PMO conference last week about exactly this kind of thing that we've been doing with one of our customers, which was really good to see because actually, we sometimes only hear from organizations that want to book on training courses. And actually, what we're starting to do is build a lot more relationships by understanding what the training needs analysis steps are for some of the PMO teams, so you get a better idea about and can advise on, maybe these are some of the development actions you might want to take or think about. So it's been a good few months of people just starting to learn a little bit more about the kind of science behind this stuff. But hopefully it's been useful. I can't see any direct questions. Is there anything that I've missed, Jen?
No, I think Eileen's been covering the chat very well throughout. Thank you, Eileen.
Right. Okay, super. So that's all from me then. I'm going to leave you to go off and do some great PMOing. And I'd love to hear any thoughts. Drop me a line. I'm on LinkedIn or get into our LinkedIn group. We have PMO Learners, a LinkedIn group. Get into there. Just make sure that you're connected with us and on socials as well. And we will be sharing this session and also putting the links out to you that we've shared in chat as well. But I'd just like to thank you for your time and have a lovely rest of the week. Yeah, super. Take care.